Rabbi.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Good morning, a pretty mazel tov. We're going to begin our services with your Shacharit, with morning blessings. You can find a Siddur Lav Shalom underneath your seat here in the sanctuary. We're on page 103, 65 in the Sing Shalom for Shabbat and festivals, and page 10 in the older Sing Shalom. These are the books if you're at home. That first page number will always pertain to the sanctuary. Again, we're on page 103. I invite you to rise. Baruch atah Adonai, Elohim melech haolam, asher natan l'sativi, na'avchim yom v'layla. Baruch atah Adonai, Elohim melech haolam, shesani b'tzalmo. Baruch atah Adonai, Elohim melech haolam, shesani b'korbi. Baruch atah Adonai, Elohim melech haolam, shesani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai, Elohim melech haolam, lokei v'kibri. Baruch atah Adonai, Elohim melech haolam, avi sharmi. Baruch atah Adonai, Elohim melech haolam, matir asuri. Baruch atah Adonai, Elohim melech haolam, zokei kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai, Elohim melech haolam, roka haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai, Elohim melech haolam, mechli mitzadikaper. Baruch atah Adonai, Elohim melech haolam, shesad b'kol tzorki. Baruch atah Adonai, Elohim melech haolam, ozer Yisrael b'kura. Baruch atah Adonai, Elohim melech haolam, ozer Yisrael b'tifara. Baruch atah Adonai, Elohim melech haolam, anotei v'yevkora. Baruch atah Adonai, Elohim melech haolam, Usinu hayom, u'hoyom, l'chinu chasura kami b'necho v'yikorenu, v'tikolinu chasadim tovim. Baruch atah Adonai, Elohim chasadim tovim le'amo Yisrael. You can be seated. We're on 105. Ashreinu, ma tov elkeinu, ma na'im koreleinu, ma yavayim shatenu, asher nishmachnu mashkinu marivi. Erev haboker gomerim pamayim b'chol yom, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai echad. Kadesh את שמך, ומקדישי שמך, וקדש את שמך בעולמך, ובשורתך תרים את תטביח קרננו, ברוך אתה אדוני, וקדש את שמך ברבים. Move to passages of study. We'll meet together after we read through the additional passages on pages 109 or page 70. יהי רצון לפניך, אדוני דוד ואלוהי אבותינו, שתיתן חלקנו את תורתך ונחיה בתלמידיו של אהרון הכהן, אוהב שלום ורודף שלום, אוהב את הבריות וקרבן לתורה. Kaddish Rabbanan is on page 111, 71, or 20. Yit gadol v'yit kadash shemei Rabbi. Be'almai Dvar Torah yamliv malchutei. B'chayekon u'yomekon u'chayiv d'chol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala Gryczman karim v'yimru amen. Yehi shemei Rabbi barach ve'olam v'amei maya. Yitbarach v'Shabbat v'Yitpa'ar v'Yishamam v'Yitnaseh. V'Yitadar v'Yitaleh v'Yitalal shemei Gryczman v'Ruchu. Leila minkol v'Rchata v'Shirata. Tush v'Rchata v'Nechamata. Damiran v'Alma v'Yimru amen. Al Yisrael v'Al Rabbanan v'Al Talmidei v'Al Kol Talmidei v'Al Kol man v'Yaskin v'Oraita. Ki v'Yatra hadin b'di v'chol atar v'atar. Yehi v'hon ochom shlama rabba. China v'chisa v'rachamim. V'chayin arivim v'mzona revicha. U'forkana min kadam v'hohon d'Yishmaya v'Yimru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chayin tovim malenu v'al kol Yisrael v'Yimru amen. Osei shalom b'mama. Hu barachama yaseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'Yimru amen. The Psalm for Shabbat, page 112, 72 or 32. Hayom Shabbat Kodesh Shabbat V'Yimru B'Yimru B'Yimru Shabbat. Ujinukum b'seiva, tishini v'radani b'yu, v'hagid yasharaton, ha'yitzri v'lov l'tapa. Turn to page 120, 81, or 50. Yisor shir ha'yukat, ha'bayit ha'davi, ha'yum ch'avanai yibetani v'l'samati v'ayim. Haftarah mitzvah v'malcholim, Shaltas ha'kiv shazarein simcha, v'man yisamer chachavod lo yitom, Adonai Elohai le'olam otecha. Mourner's Kaddish is found on 121, 82, or 52. Yit gadol v'yit kadash shemei Rabbi. Be'alma Dvar Torah yamliv malchutei. B'chayekon v'yomechon u'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala v'zman karim v'yimru amen. Yehi shemei Rabba barach ve'olam v'amei maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yishamam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dehudsha b'richu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush b'chata v'nechamata. Damiran be'alma v'yimru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Osei shalom b'Rama. Hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Those who are able are invited to rise. We're on page 122 in Lev Shalem. The other seat are being 83 or 54. This red book that we're using here, again 122. Baruch Shemar v'Yahuvam Baruch Hu. Yachid Chei Olamim, Melech Meshuach U'Mordei Shemo HaGadol, Baruch Atah Adonai, Melech Mehulal V'Tishbachot. Turn forward to page, you may be seated, we turn forward to page 124, 84, or 57. Page 128, 88, or 62.
Usfatecha medaber mirma sur meirav aseto bake shalom berotreinu.
I invite you to rise from page 132, 92, or 72.
Leinu zachar lanu ki leolam chasto vayifrekeinu mitzareinu ki leolam chasto notein lechem lecho basar ki leolam chasto du leel hashamayim.
You can be seated. We turn to 134, 94, 75 for the Psalm for Shabbat. Mizmor Shir B'Yom HaShabbat. Odinukum besefa, tishini miranani, yulegi keshar Adonai tzuri, the law of law tapo, Adonai malaki utavesh lavesh Adonai v'zitavet. Edotecha neim lumeyad, levicha nava kodesh, Adonai leyorech yamim, Adonai leyorech yamim. Turn forward to 136, 96, or 81. Ashri shabiditecha telilu pasela. Turn forward to page 141, 188, and the other Sidurim, Psalm 150. Hallelujah, 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 Vikasha, hallelujah, hallelujah, Ki Hauzo. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. shun kvodo le'olam, v'yimalei chodo et kol haaretz, amen, v'amen. Please rise, v'yivarech David et Adonai, v'yimei kol hakocha v'yomei Rabbi. Atahu Adonai Elohim, asher b'charta be'havra, v'yotzito me'or kasti, v'samta shemo Avraham, v'wetzata et levavo ne'eman levanecha,
V'charoti mo
habrit l'teiti teretz ha'kanani, ha'peiti ha'merit. V'hayam b'karta lifneihem, v'yaveru b'tov, hayam b'yabasha, v'yadro defeihem yishtavim zolahu, kemo heaven b'mayim hazim.
Ayo Shadonai Bayom Mahu Adisham Eshav Yarsham. Vayemiru Banuna.
Israel Ziyad HaGidulah, Asher Asa Adonai b'Mitzrayim, V'yiruham et Adonai, Vayemiru Adonai, Moshe Abdo. Az Yashir Moshe b'nei Yisrael Shirah. Adonai Eloh, Leolam Boim, Adonai Lucha Moshe Elohim, Velu Poshim B'Hartzion Mishpotet Haresa, Veitav Adonai Meducha, Vaya Adonai Lemelech Kol Haaretz, Vayom Hahu, Adonai Echad, Shmo Echad. You can be seated. We begin Nishmat at the top of 145 or on 104, 334. Nishmat kol echai, tvarech et shimcha, Adonai Eloheinu, Nishmat kol echai, tvarech et shimcha, Adonai Eloheinu.
Max comes to the bima as we begin the Shacharit service on page 147 in the Lev Shalem, 105 in the Slim Shalom, and 336 from the Sim Shalom if you're following in those Sidurim at home. Shochen Ad, second paragraph, 147.
Shochen Ad Maron Vekadosh Shemo.
Shochen Ad Maron Vekadosh Shemo.
Befi Sharim Titalal Divrei Salikim Titbarach Uvlashon Chasidim Titromam Uvker Kedoshim Titkadash Umakalot Tirkelot Amcha Beit Yisrael Shechen Chova Korisrim Lefanecha Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avoteinu Lehodo Le'alel Le'shabeach Lefaer Le'romem Le'hader Levarech Le'alel U'kaleis Al Divrei Shirat B'tishbachot Davi Ben Ishai Avdecha Meshichecha.
Please rise.
Yishtabach Shimcha La'ed Malkeinu.
Berachot v'hodaot meta ve'ad olam Baruch atah Adonai el melech gadol v'tishbachot El ha'hodaot Adonai niflot Havocher b'shirei zimra Melech el chei olamim.
Amen.
Yikadav v'yikadash shemei Rabbi.
Amen.
V'mal divra kirtei v'amlit malchutei V'chaychon v'yomechon v'chay d'kol beit Yisrael V'agala izman kariv v'imru
Amen. Yishmer V'amvorach Le'elam Haya Yitbarach.
Yitbarach v'yishtabach Yitbarach shema v'yinaseh Yitadar v'yitala v'yitala Shmei d'kedishah
B'richu.
V'chata v'shirata Tishbechata v'nechemata Tamiram b'amai v'imru
Amen. We're about to do the Baruch Hu on 149 or 107 or 340. After the Baruch Hu, you may be seated through the Shema and the Brachot before and after until we rise for the quiet Amidah, which will be in the bottom of page 158. But now Baruch Hu, and then we may be seated.
Baruch Hu Adonai HaBorach.
Baruch Adonai HaBorach Le'olam Vayeh.
Baruch Adonai Borach Le'olam Vayeh.
Baruch Adonai
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Yotzer orecha Oshech Oseh shalom u'veret hakol Hakol yoducha ve'hakol yeshabechucha Ein keirchecha Adonai Eloheinu l'olam hazeh Ve'ein zolatecha malkeinu l'chei olam haba Efes biltecha yoleinu limon hamashiach Ve'ein zol melecha moshienu l'chiyot hametim El
Adon
Adon
HaKol HaMazim Baruch u'Borach Befi kol neshama God lo v'tivo Olam le'olam Ta'at v'tunas v'vimoto Hamid Gael Chayat HaKodesh V'nehedar Rechavot Al HaMerkava Zichut u'mishor Livnei Chiso Chesed v'rachamim Livnei Chemoto Tov v'mehorot Shebara Eloheinu Yitzhar Avidah V'dina u'vaskel Roach u'Vorach Natan Bahem Liot Moshe v'Keri Tevel Milim Ziv u'V'Kim Nonga Ziva b'chol ha'olam Smichim v'tzikta Sasi b'koam Osi v'heim haritzam konam V'ir v'chavod Notenim l'shmo Tzol averina Lezecher machuto Kara l'shemesh V'yizrach ora V'yitkin surat ha'levana Sheva notenim lo Kol tzivan ma'arov Tifei tu'getua Seraphim ve'ofanim Chayot v'kodesh Ve'lasher shava mikol ha'masim
Va'el asher shava mikol ha'masim תתברך משה שבח מעשי ידיך, ואמר יורש עשית יפרו הסלע.
תתברך סורי מלכנו וגואלי דבורי קדושים.
כולם אוהבים, כולם ברורים, כולם גברים וכולם עושים בהם וביראת רצון קונם, וכולם פותחים את פיהם בקדושה וטהרה, בשירה וזמרה ומברכים וצווחים, ומפרים עריצים ומקדישים וממליכים.
את שם האל המלך הגדול, הגיבור והנורא הקדוש הוא.
את שם המלך הגדול, הגיבור והנורא הקדוש הוא, וכולם מקבלים עליהם על מלכות שמיים זה מזה, ונותנים רשות זה לזה, להקדיש ליוצרם בנחת רוח, בשפה ברורה ובנעמה קדושה, כולם כאחד עונים ואומרים
קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלוך לארץ כבודו.
והאופנים וחיות הקודש ברעש גדול מנעשים לעומתם שרפים, לעומתם מסבכים ואומרים
ברוך כבוד אדוני מקומו ליפול.
אור חדש על ציון תאיר
ונזכה לנו מהרה להרה. אור חדש על ציון תאיר ונזכה לנו מהרה להרה. ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המליאות. אהבה רבה אהבתנו אדוני אלוהינו לגדולה ויתרה עמלת עלינו. אבינו מלכנו בעבור אבותינו שבטו לך אבינו מלכנו ותלמדנו חוקי חיים כן תכוננו תלמדנו אבינו הרחם רחם עלינו ותקל ליבנו להבין והבינו השכיל לשמוע לשמור ולעשות ולקיים את כל דברי תלמוד תורתך באהבה והאמנו בתורתך ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך ויחד לבבנו לאהבה וליראה את שמך ולא הגדול והנורא פתחנו נגילה ונשמחה ישועתך ואבינו לשלום.
והביאנו לשם מארבע כנפות הארץ ותוליכנו קוממיות לארצנו כי אל פה ישועת אתה ובנו בחרת מכון ולשון וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול סלע באמת להודות לך וליחדך באהבה. ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר עמו ישראל באהבה. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. Dvar Torah kayam u'shmo kayam, ve'kiso nachon u'malchutov emunat le'ad kayamet.
Barak Chaim Ekayim Amari Nechmani Leleon.
Emet she'etahu Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu, Malkeinu melech Avotenu, Goel Avotenu, Yotzreinu Sor Yeshuatenu, Podenu Matzilenu Molam Shemecha, Ein Elohim Zilatecha, Ezrat Avotenu Atahu Me'olam. Telo le'elel yom baruch umvorach, Moshe v'nei Yisrael lecha anu shira v'simcha rabba v'yemru chulam.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot osei pelech.
Shira chadasha shifchu gelim, v'smecha tzavach hayam yachak lamudu v'yemru.
Adonai Imloch le'olam va'ed, Tzur Yisrael, Kuma be'ezrat Yisrael, U'techenu mecha, Yehuda ve'Yisrael, Go aleinu, Adonai tzvaot shemo, Kedosh Yisrael,
Baruch atah Adonai Gal Yisrael.
If you're still diving the Amidah, please continue at your own pace. We continue. The repetition begins on 159 in Lev Shalem, 115 and 354 in the other Sidurim. We remain standing through the Kedusha on the next few pages.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Ha'el Gadol Gibor Nara El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim Befonei Enako Fizoker Chaste Avovim Goel B'neinehem Lemar Shemot Ba'ava Melech Ozir Mashiach Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen
Amen.
Atah Gibor Olam Adonai Mechaim Iti Atah Rav Loshiach Mechalkel
Chaim bechesed, mechagei meitim berachamim, somech noflim berofech olim, umatir asurim, umekayem emunatel lishenei afa, michamocha bal gerurot umidom elah.
Baruch atah Adonai Mechaye Hamid.
Amen. Nigga, show like a change about the Shimo Tobish Mem and Godel Yad and Yakabikar Hazeh Yamah.
Nekadesh Trim Kabbalah Kishem Shemot Kishimoto Mishmei Maro Takatu Binecha Vikral Zel Zevamor.
Kadosh, 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 Adonai, so Aretz Kadosh. Az bekol rash gadol der bechazak mashmiel kom nasil rat rafil mitam ruch yomei.
Az bekol rash gadol hadir bechazak mashmiel ko minasin lumatan serafim lumatan baruch yomeru.
Baruch Adonai minkomo.
Mecha malkeinu tofia v'timloch alenu ki mecha ki manach lelach matai timloch betzion beker בקרוב בימינו לעולם ועד תשכון, תתקדע ותתקדש בתוך ירושלים עירך, לדור ודור לנצח נצחים.
ועינינו תראנה מלכותך, והדבר האמור
על ידי דוד משיח צאתך.
ימלוך אדוני עולם אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה.
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור, לדור ודור, נגיד גודלך.
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, נגיד גודלך. ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נדיש, קדושתך נדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש, לא ימוש לעולם ועד.
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, נגיד גודלך.
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, נגיד גודלך. כי המלך גדול, גדול וקדוש, גדול וקדוש אתה. Amen. You may be seated.
ישמח משה בן מתנת חלקו, כי אבן נאמן קראת לו, כליל תפארת בראשו נתת, ועמדו לפני על הר סיני, ושני לוחות אבנים הורמים בידו, וכתוב בהם שמירת שבת, וכן כתוב בתורתך. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת
לדורתם בביתולם. ביני ובני ישראל,
אותי לעולם,
אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, Shabbat, Torah Merit Olam.
Sheshet Yamin, Asa Adonai, Et HaShamayim,
Et Haaretz V'Shamiru, B'nei Yisrael, Et HaShabbat, Lasot Et HaShabbat, Torah Merit Olam.
Vayamashi, Shabbat
Vayinafash, Shabbat Vayinafash, Shabbat Vayinafash, V'Shamiru, B'nei Yisrael, Et HaShabbat, Lasot Et HaShabbat, L'Torah Merit Olam.
V'lo natato Adonai Eloheinu l'eratzot, v'lo inchalato malkeinu l'ovdei tefillin, v'gam b'mnuchato lo yishkeinu arlin, ki l'Yisrael amcha natato ba'ava, l'zera Yaakov Hashem ba'am b'charta, al mekatei shevim kulam yishbeu v'yitangu mituvecha, v'ashevim ratzita bo v'kidashto, chemda yaminoto karata, zecher l'maaseh v'rishit.
Eloheinu, Elohei Avoteinu, Ritzei, Nuchatenu, Kadeshenu, B'mitzvotecha, B'tein Eloheinu, B'toratecha, Sabinu Nituecha, V'samechenu, B'shuatecha, V'zaher Libeinu, V'yavdecha V'emet, V'hanchilenu, Adonai Eloheinu, V'ahava Ratzon, Shabbat Kodshecha, V'yanuchu V'Yisrael, Mekadeshei Shemecha.
Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Amen.
Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu b'amcha Yisrael v'tfilatam, v'yashev et ha'avodah lidvir beitecha, u'tfilatam b'ahava tekevel v'ratzon, u'thi l'ratzon tamid avodah Yisrael amecha. V'tachseina eininu b'shuvcha l'tzion b'rachamim, Baruch atah Adonai Hamachazir Shekinato Lezion.
Mimoti Nachlu Lashtam.
Hatov kilo chulam rachamecha, v'hamrachem kilo tamud chastecha, me'olam kivinu lach. Ve'al chulam yitbarak yishumam, Shimcha Malkeinu Tamid Olam Va'ed, V'chol HaChaim Yoducha Sela, V'halalu et Shimcha Be'emet, Halalu Yeshuatenu V'ezratenu Sela, Baruch atah Adonai, Hatov Shimcha Lecha Ne'lehodot. Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu, Baruchenu B'bracha Hamsheleshet B'Torah, Haktuva al Yedei Moshe Avdecha, Hamora mifnei Haron uvanav, Hakohanim HaKedushecha ka'amor. Yevarecha Adonai v'yishmirecha, Ya'er Adonai panav alecha v'chunecha, Yisa Adonai panav alecha v'yasem lecha shalom.
King Yehi Ratzon. Sim Shalom. Sim Shalom Tova U'bracha. Sim Shalom Tova U'bracha. Chaim v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael amecha. Baruchenu Avinu kulanu ke'echad be'or panecha. Or panecha. Sim Shalom Tova U'bracha. Sim Shalom Tova U'bracha. Ivyor panecha natah lanu Adonai Eloheinu, Torah chaim ve'ahavat chesed Raka, Raka, Verachami, Vechayim, Ve'esha. Sim Shalom, Sim, Sim, Sim Shalom. Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha. Sim, Sim, Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha. V'tov beinecha levarech et amecha Yisrael. B'chol eit u'b'chol shah b'shlomecha.
Baruch atah Adonai Hamavarech et Amo Yisrael b'shalom.
Amen. Kaddish Shalem 167.
Yikadal Shemei Rabba. Yamad Yivrach Kirtei V'amlik Malchutei V'chayachon Yom Echonu Chayedu Kol Beit Yisrael. V'agalah Yizman Kari V'yimeru.
Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevorach Leolam Leomei Homaya Igara.
Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpar V'shemar V'yinaseh V'yitadar V'yitalel V'yitalach Shmei Kedusha.
Richu.
Leila Mikol Berchata V'shirata Tishbechata V'nechamata Amirabah Mar V'yimeru.
Amen.
Tikabel Salaton Uvaton Teko Yisrael Kadam Avuton Divishmai V'yimeru.
Amen.
Yesh Shlama Rabbanim Shemaya V'chaim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'yimeru.
Amen.
Oseh Shalom B'imramahu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'yimeru.
Amen. Vishesh Koach to Max on a beautiful Shacharit. We're going to continue with the Torah service 168 in the Lev Shalem. If you're from home in a different Sidur, 139 or 394.
En kemocha ba'olim Adonai v'timasecha malchutecha malchut kol amin u'memshaltecha b'chol dor v'ador Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai ilov le'olam va'ed Adonai
Shalom, Abharachamim, Heitiv Agertzoncha, Etzion, Tivnei Chama Yerushalayim, Tivnei Chama Yerushalayim,
Vayhi bin Aaron vayomer Moshe.
Mipanecha ki mitzion tetzei Torah. Ki mitzion tetzei Torah. Baruch Shenata Be'anarachet, Elikme ויפתח ליבי באורייתא ותשלים משאלין דליבי דליבה דכל עמך ישראל לטוב וחיים אמן.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu,
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonai Kadosh Shema.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonai Kadosh.
Galu Adonai Tiver, Veneromima Shema Yaakov.
Slecha Adonai Ki chol hashamayim u'haaretz, ki chol hashamayim u'haaretz, lecha Adonai amamlecha, yamid na'aseh lechol v'rosh. Romemu, Romemu, Adonai Eloheinu, ve'ishachavu, ve'ishachavu, le'adovrav kadoshim. Romemu, ve'ishachavu, ve'ishachavu, lehar kodsho, ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. Ay, ay, Adonai, 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 Maybe seat everyone. Welcome and Shabbat Shalom. As we read from Parshat Shoftim, it's on page 1088 in the Eitz Chaim Chumash. If you're following from home in a different Tanakh, you want to go to the 16th chapter of the book of Dvarim, Deuteronomy, chapter 16, verse 18. And our first reader will be Sadie.
ויעזור ויגיב ישיר לכל החוסים בו ונאמר אמן הכל הפוגות על אלוהינו שנו כבוד לתורה תעמוד שנו יפה בת אפרים ומלכה יעמוד ירוחם הבר בן ליבה ופרידל לעלייה הראשונה
נותן לך בכל שעריך, אשר אדוני אלוהיך נותן לך לשבתך, ושבתו את המשפט צדק. לא תתן משפט, לא תכיר פנים, ולא תפח שוחד, כי השוחד יעבר עיני חכמים, ויסלק דברי צדיקים. צדק צדק תרדוף, למען תחיה וירשת את הארץ, אשר אדוני אלוהיך נותן לך. לא תיטע לך אשר הכל עץ אל מזבח אדוני אלוהיך אשר תעשה לך, ולא תקים לך מצבה אשר שנא אדוני אלוהיך לא תזבח. אדוני אלוהיך שור וזר, אשר יבוא כל דבר רע, כי תאווה. אדוני אלוהיך הוא, כי מצא בקרבך באחד שעריך, אשר אדוני אלוהיך נותן לך, איש אל אישה, אשר יעשה את הרע. בעיני אדוני אלוהיך לעבור בריתו, ויעבוד אלוהים אחרים, וישתחוות להם, ולשמש או לירח, או לכל צבא השמיים אשר לא ציוויתי. ויגד לך ושמעת ודרשת היטב, והנה אמת נכון הדבר נעשתה, התועבת הזאת בישראל. וצאת האישה את האישה ההיא אשר עשו את הדבר הרע הזה אל שעריך, את האיש או את האישה, וסגרתם באבנים ומתו על פי שניים עדים, או שלושה עדים ומהמת לא יומת על פי עד אחד. יד העדים תהיה בו בראשונה להמיתו, ביד כל העם באחרונה, ובירת הרע מקרבך, כי פלא ממך דבר למשפט, בין דם לדם, בין דין לדין, ובין נגע לנגע, דברי ריבות בשעריך, וקמת ועלית אל המקום אשר יבחר אדוני אלוהים אלוהיך בו, ובאת אל הכהנים הלוויים ואל השופט אשר יהיה בימים ההם, ודרשת להגידו לך את דבר המשפט, ועשית על פי הדבר אשר יגידו לך מן המקום ההוא אשר יבחר אדוני, ושמעת לעשות ככל אשר יורוך על פי התורה אשר יורוך, ולמשפט אשר יאמרו לך תעשה לא תעשו מן הדבר אשר יגידו לך ימין ושמאל, והאיש אשר יעשה בזדון לבלתי שמוע אל הכהן העומד לשרת שם את אדוני אלוהיך, או אל השופט, ומי האיש ההוא ויראת הרע מישראל, וכל העם ישמעו ויראו ולא ימזיתו.
תעמוד שבעת מרדכי זיז ומלכה, יעמוד זלמן בן מנשה וחיה בלומה לעלייה שנייה. We are on page 1092, verse 14, for the second aliyah.
בחר בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
כי תבוא לארץ אשר אדוני אלוהיך נותן לך, וירשת וישבת בה, ואמרת אשימה עלי מלך ככל הגויים אשר סביבותי. שום תשים עליך מלך אשר יבחר אדוני אלוהיך בו מקרב אחיך. תשים עליך מלך לא תוכל לתת עליך איש נוכרי אשר לא אחיך הוא. רק לא ירבה לו סוסים ולא ישיב את העם מצרימה למען הרבות סוס. ואני אמר לכם לא תוסיפון לשוב בדרך הזה עוד, ולא ירבה לו נסים ולא יסור לבבו, וכסף וזהב לא ירבה לו מאוד. והיה כשבתו על כיסא ממלכתו, וכתב לו את משנה התורה הזאת על ספר מלפני הכהנים הלוויים, ועתה עמו בקרבו כל ימי חייו, למען ילמד ליראה את אדוני אלוהיו, לשמור את כל דברי התורה הזאת ואת החוקים האלה לעשותם. לבלתי רום לבבו מאחיו, ובלתי סור מן המצווה ימין ושמאל, למען יאריך ימים על ממלכתו ובניו בקרב ישראל.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
תעמוד מרים בת צמא ושיפה, יעמוד אדם בן ברוך ורחל לעלייה השלישית.
Baruch et Adonai Hamorach. Baruch Adonai Hamorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן. לא יהיה לכהנים הלוויים כל שבט לוי חלק ונחלה עם ישראל, איש אדוני ונחלתו יאכלון, ונחלה לא יהיה לו בקרב אחיו. אדוני הוא נחלתו כאשר דיבר לו, וזה יהיה משפט הכהנים מטעם את זבחי הזבחים שורים זה. ונתן לכהן הזרוע והחיים והקיבה ראשית דגנך תירשך וישרך, וראשית גזענך תיתן לו כי בו בחר אדוני אלוהיך מכל שבטיך לעמוד לשרת בשם אדוני ובניו כל הימים.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen.
תעמוד רבקה בת זמן ושיבה, יעמוד מנחם בן אברהם ויהודית לעלייה הרביעית.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
Baruch
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים, ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
ויבוא הלוי מאחד שערך מכל ישראל אשר הוא דרשם, ובא בכבוד נפשו אל המקום אשר יבחר אדוני, את בשם אדוני אלוהיו מכל אחיו הלווים העומדים שם לפני אדוני חלק כחלק יאכלו לבד מקרוב אל אבות כי אתה בא לארץ אשר אדוני אלוהיך נותן לך לא תלמד לעשות כטובות הגויים ההם לא ימצא בך מעביר בין אויביתו באש קוסם קסמים מעונן ומנחש ומחשב וחובר חבר ושואלו וידוני ודורש על המתים כי טובת אדוני כל עושה אלה ובגלל הטובות האלה אדוני אלוהיך מוריש אותם מפניך תמיד תהיה עם אדוני אלוהיך.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tocheinu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Ya'amod Shimon ben Asher ta'amod Penina bat Sarah Laliyah HaChamishit. Before we read the fifth Aliyah, we're going to pause, cover the Torah, and offer a blessing for healing for all those in need of body, spirit, and mind healing. We keep a list in our community. I'll read through that list, and when I complete that list, you're welcome to add names in the pause. Misha Beirach, Avotinu Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Bimotenu Zarari Karecha V'Leha, Hu Yivarech, V'Yirapeh et Kol HaCholim, et Zahava Yafa bat Esther, et Rivka bat Pesha, et Yosef ben Achim Mendel ben Gittel, et Yehuda ben Avraham Sarah, et Ben Zion ben Gittel, et Elena Kramer, et Zerachana bat Tzivya, et Risachana bat Chassid Geulah, et Yehuda Yisrael ben Leah, et Mordechai ben Esther, et Yehudi bat Rivka, et Dani Benjamin ben Dovanarit, et Taibo bat Racheleah, et Joshua ben Chandel, et bat Eliah bat Chana, et Kiracha bat Shulimi Pesa, et Yitzchak Elimelech, et Yosef Simcha ben Sarah Chana, et David, Yosef ben Rivka, Tzipora Liba bat Esther Chana, et Taibo bat Chaya, et Chana Zahava bat Sarah Freda, et Aiden Ezra Chaim ben Dvorah, et Tova bat Leah, et Shimon ben Chaya, et Meir ben Miriam, et Talia bat Leah, et Drezel bat Yisrael, Liron bat Ilan v'Chedva, et Anel Morales, et Jerry Berger, et Yaakov ben Ezat, et Avram Yaakov ben Rivka, et Daniel ben Shira, et Yitzchak Dov ben Yosef, et Dvorah, et Moshe Nachum ben Rachel, et Shmuel Leib ben Leah v'Leah. Kol hacholim HaKadosh Baruch Hu yimalei rachamim aleihem v'chachazikam urabotam v'yishlach lahem meira refuah shlema min hashamayim refuat hanefesh refuat haguf b'toch sha'ar chacholim v'chazek et yedei hosekim et tzorcheichem Shabbat imilisok refuah krova lavo hashabbat alav bizman kariv v'nomar amen. We wish a speedy and complete healing to all those who are in need. Turn back to our Torah reading, the fifth Aliyah, which can be found on page 1095, beginning with verse 14.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamburah. Baruch Adonai et Brach Leolam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bahar Banu Mikol Ha'amim Venatan Lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Ki hagoyim ha'ele אשר אתה יורש אותם, אל מאוננים ואל קוסמים ישמעו, ואתה לא כן נתן לך אדוני אלוהיך. נביא מקרבך מאחיך כמוני, יקים לך אדוני אלוהיך, אליו תשמעון. ככל אשר שאלת, מעם אדוני אלוהיך בחורף, ביום הקהל לאמור, לא אוסף לשמוע את קול אדוני אלוהי, את האש הגדולה הזאת לא אראה ולא אמות, לא אראה עוד ולא אמות. ויאמר אדוני אלי, היטיבו אשר דיברו, נביא הקים להם מקרב אחיהם כמוך, ונתתי דברי בפיו, ודיבר עליהם את כל אשר אצוונו. והיה האיש אשר לא ישמע אל דברי, אשר ידבר בשמי, אנוכי אדרוש מעמו. אך הנביא אשר יזיד ידבר דבר בשמי, את אשר לא ציוויתיו לדבר, ואשר ידבר בשם אלוהים אחרים, ומת הנביא ההוא. וכי תאמר בלבביך, איכה נדע את הדבר אשר לא דיברו אדוני, אשר ידבר הנביא בשם אדוני, ולא יהיה הדבר, ולא יבואו הדבר אשר לא דיברו אדוני. בזדון דיברו הנביא, לא תגור ממנו. כי יחריד אדוני אלוהיך את הגויים אשר אדוני אלוהיך נותן לך את עצם, וירשתם וישבת יראם ובתיהם. 3 ערים תבדיל לך בתוך ארצך, אשר אדוני אלוהיך נותן לך לרשתה, תכין לך הדרך, ושילשת את גבול ארצך, אשר ינחילך אדוני אלוהיך. והיה לנוס שמה כל רוצח, וזה דבר רוצח אשר ינוס שמה וחי, אשר יכה את רעהו בלי דעת, והוא לא שנא לו מתמול שלשום, ואשר יבוא את רעהו ביער לחטוב עצים, ונדחה ידו בגרזן לכרות העץ, ונשל הברזל מן העץ, ומצא את רעהו ומת. הוא ינוס אל אחת הערים האלה וחי, פן ירדוף גואל הדם אחרי הרוצח, כי יחם לבבו וישיגו, כי ירבה הדרך והיכהו נפש, ולא אין משפט מוות, כי לא שנאו לא מתמול שלשום. על כן אנוכי מצווך לאמור, 3 ערים תבדיל לך, ואם ירחיב אדוני אלוהיך את גבולך, ואשר נשבע לאבותיך, ונתן לך את כל הארץ אשר דיבר לתת לאבותיך, כי תשמור את כל המצווה הזאת לעשותה, אשר אנוכי מצווך היום לאהבה את אדוני אלוהיך, והלכת בדרכיו כל הימים, ואספת לך עוד 3 ערים על 3 האלה, ולא ישפך דם נקי בקרב ארצך, אשר אדוני אלוהיך נותן לך נחלה, והיה עליך דמים. וכי יהיה איש שנא לרעהו, וערב לו וקם עליו, והיכהו נפש ומת, ונעש אל אחת הערים האל, ושלחו זקני עירו, ולקחו אותו משם, ונתנו אותו ביד גואל הדם ומת. לא תחוס עינך עליו, ובערת דם הנקי מישראל וטוב לך.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, נתן לנו, תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Ta'amod. Chana Ruth Bat Melech v'Rachel v'Aliyah HaShishit.
Baruch hu et Adonai habarach. Adonai barach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Lo taseh gevurecha asher gavlu rishonim v'nachlecha shetinchal ba'aretz asher Adonai Elohecha noten lecha l'rishtach lo yakum ed echad be'ish lechol avon u'lechol chatat v'chol chet asher yecheta al pi shnei edim al pi shlosha edim yakum davar ki yakum ed chamas be'ish lanod bo sarah ve'amdu shnei anashim asher lehem hariv lifnei Adonai לפני הכהנים והשופטים אשר יהיו בימים ההם ודרשו השופטים היטב והנה את שקר העד שקר ענה ואחיו ועשיתם לו כאשר זמם לעשות לאחיו וביארת הרע מקרבך והנשארים ישמעו ויראו ולא יוסיפו לעשות עוד כדבר הרע הזה בקרבך ולא תחוס עיניך נפש בנפש עין בעין שן בשן יד ביד רגל ברגל כי תצא למלחמה על אויביך וראית סוס ורכב עם רב ממך לא תירא מהם כי אדוני אלוהיך עמך המעלך מארץ מצרים והיה כקרובכם אל המלחמה וניגש הכהן ודיבר אל העם ואמר עליהם שמע ישראל אתם קרבים היום למלחמה על אויביכם אל ירח לבבכם אל תיראו ואל תחפזו ואל תערצו מפניהם כי אדוני אלוהיכם ההולך עמכם להילחם לכם עם אויביכם להושיעכם ודיברו השוטרים אל העם לאמור מי האיש אשר בנה ויחדש ולא חנכו ילך וישוב לביתו פן ימות במלחמה ואיש אחר יחנכנו ומי האיש אשר נטע כרם ולא קיללו ילך וישוב לביתו פן ימות במלחמה ואיש אחר יחללנו ומי האיש אשר הרס אישה ולא לקחך ילך וישוב לביתו פן ימות במלחמה ואיש אחר ייקחנה ויאספו השוטרים לדבר אל העם ואמרו מי האיש הירא ורך הלבב ילך וישוב לביתו ולא ימאס את לבב אחיו כלבבו והיה
ככלות השוטרים לדבר עם, ופקדו שרי צבאות בראש העם.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Ta'amod Ya'el bat Yercham be'er v'shindel Yafa Yamod Daniel ben Zalman Shiva L'Aliyah HaShavit. As we wish Rick a Yeshar Koach on reading that last Aliyah, we also wish him Yeshar Koach on his beautiful teaching of many students, including today's Bar Mitzvah. We continue with the 7th Aliyah. We're on page 1103, verse 10.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Adonai Baruch L'olam Vayed Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu et torato Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
כי תקרא ולעיר להילחם עליה וקראת עליה לשלום והיה אם שלום תנחה ופתחה לך והיה כל העם נמצא בה יהיו לך למס ועבדוך אם לא תשלים עמך ועשתה עמך מלחמה וצרת עליה ונתנה לאלוהיך בידיך והכית את כל זכורה לפי חרב רק הנשים והטף והבהמה וכל אשר יהיה בעיר שללה תבוז לך ואכלת את שלל אויביך אשר נתן אלוהיך נותן לך אשר נתן אדוני אלוהיך נותן אלוהיך לך כן תעשה לכל הערים הרחוקות ממך מאוד אשר לא מערי הגויים האלה הנה רק מערי העמים האלה אשר אדוני אלוהיך נותן לך נחלה לא תחיה כל נשמה כי אחרים תחרימם החיתי והאמורי הכנעני והפריזי החיבי והיבוסי כאשר ציווך אדוני אלוהיך למען אשר לא ילמדו אתכם לעשות ככל תועבותם אשר עשו להם וחטאתם לאדוני אלוהיכם כי תצור אל עיר ימים רבים להילחם עליה לתפשה לא תשחית את עצה לנדוח עליו גרזן כי ממנו תאכל ואותו לא תכרות כי האדם עץ השדה לבוא מפניך במצור רק עץ אשר תדע כי לא עץ מאכל הוא אותו תשחית וחרעת ובנית מצור על העיר אשר היא עושה עמך מלחמה עד ביתה כי ימצא חלל באדמה אשר אדוני אלוהיך נותן לך לרשת הנופל בשדה לא נודע מי היכהו ויצאו זקניך ושבטיך ומדדו אל הערים אשר סביבות החלל והיה העיר הקרובה אל החלל ולקחו זקני העיר ההיא עגלת בקר אשר לא עובד בה אשר לא משכה בעול והורידו זקני העיר ההיא את עגלה אל נחל איתן אשר לא יעבד בו ולא יזרע וערפו שם את העגלה בנחל וניגשו הכהנים בני לוי קיבם בהחר אדוני אלוהיך לשרתו לברך בשם אדוני ועל פיהם יהיה כל ריב וכל נגע וכל זקני העיר ההיא הקרובים אל החלל יחרצו את ידיהם על העגלה הערופה בנחל ויענו ויאמרו ידינו לא שפכו את הדם הזה ועינינו לא ראו כפר לעמך ישראל אשר פדית אדוני ואל תיתן דם נקי בקרב עמך ישראל ונכפר להם הדם ואתה תבער הדם הנקי מקרבך כי תעשה הישר בעיני אדוני.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu torat emet v'chayei olam nata betochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Daniel V'Yael Hamaftir. Please rise for Chatzi Kaddish. Yitkata v'yitkata shmirapa V'yomadi pratir tevim lichokutei V'chayikon V'yomeikon V'chayik v'chol Beit Yisrael V'gala V'gala Uvizman karivenu Amen Yeshmi Rabba Mevarach V'yalam L'Olayah Shabbat, Dvar Torah, Nasi, Vitadar, Vitalei, Vitalom, Shmidi Kudesha, Veri, Lamin Kolber Kata, Vishirata, Tushvekata, Venekamata, Tamira, Randiama, Vimiru, Amen. Everyone but the immediate Gryczmans are going to be seated.
We're going to pause for a moment before we watch Max take his aliyah to the Torah. He's already led so much of the service and read so much of the Torah. But this is the moment that his family, his extended family and friends have been focusing their attention on when you say the brachot to the Torah for the first time and really become a bar mitzvah. And before we do that, you're going to hear two blessings. One that the Jewish people have been saying to their children as they become bar mitzvah for centuries, and one that your parents have written for you for this very occasion. All you got to do is listen to this.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shiptarani me ansho shelazeh.
Amen.
Amen.
Praised are you, Adonai, our God, who rules the universe, who has freed us of some responsibilities and conferred new ones upon Max.
Amen.
Amen.
Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu.
Our God and God of our ancestors, we turn to you for these blessings for our son Max. Max, you were in quite a hurry to come into this world, and I suppose that speedy entrance foreshadowed not only your desire to be early to everything, but also your natural athletic ability. However, what stands out more than being punctual or athletic is that you really show up in this world. And it's the way that you show up that we treasure most.
We're very proud of the path you've taken to this day, and we want to offer you blessings for the path that you'll make ahead. Never stop asking questions. You're not satisfied with superficial answers to your questions, ever. We hope that you'll continue to put your desire for meaningful understanding to good use in your pursuit of both knowledge and happiness.
Play hard and stick to your values. Use your fiercely competitive spirit to hold yourself and others to high standards. Whether it's on the soccer field, the basketball court, in the classroom, or out in the real world, never compromise your values. And remember, in any challenge you face, we'll be there cheering for you.
Cherish and nurture your friendships and stay connected to the rich tradition of the Jewish people. You are incredibly fortunate to be part of a loving, generous, and spiritually rich community. Keep our traditions close to your heart and in your daily life. Always stand up for Israel and understand its critical role for our existence as proud Jews.
Prioritize your family and know how deeply you are loved. Your sensitive, empathetic, and kind soul is a blessing to us. We hope that our family's love fills you up wherever you go and whatever you do.
Be generous. Always appreciate what you have and give your time, effort, and treasure to others until it hurts a little bit at least. Tzedakah is central to living a blessed and full life.
Even though today you become a Jewish adult, you are and always will be our sweet boy with the most delicious dimple, caring soul, competitive drive, inquisitive mind, and loving heart.
We love you.
Yeshar Koach. And with these blessings in our heart, we turn to the maftir. Max, you've already read Torah for us today, but right now we're going to ask you to take your aliyah from the Torah. If you're following along, we're on page 1106. The Maftir, verse 7.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Borach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Borach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Ve'anu ve'amru yadeinu. Lo shachu et adam hazeh ve'anenu lo ra'u. Kapeh Lamcha Yisrael Asher Padita Adonai Ve'al titein dam naki Ve'kerev Amcha Yisrael V'nikaper Lahem Hadam Ve'ata Tevaer Hadam Hanaki Mir Kerbecha Ki Taseh Ha'eshar Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Ya'amod ha'magbiat ha'amod ha'golelet. We're going to have the person who's lifting and the person who's wrapping the Torah come forward, but we'll cover the Torah for a moment for one more blessing for Max upon the first aliyah that he's taking the Torah. Max will stay up here. Also just listening. Mishavirach Avotenu Avraham Yitzchak V'Yaakov Mishavirach Imotenu Sarai Karach Avleiha Vivarech Et Menashe Dan Ben Daniel V'Yael Shehigia Litzchot Ve'ala Lichvod HaMakom Ve'lichvod HaTorah Ve'lichvod HaShabbat Yehi Ratzon 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 HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yishmerehu v'yichayehu v'yichunen et libo v'yot shalem im Adonai Elohav v'hago b'torato lelechet v'yidrachav v'lishmor mitzvotav v'yishlach baracha v'yatzlacha b'chol ma'aseh yadav yehi ratzon shizku horav l'kadalo l'torah u'l'chupa u'masim tovim v'imzachem v'sechel tov v'yin Elohim v'yahadam v'nomar amen. You're invited to rise as the Sefer Torah is lifted and wrapped.
May be seated. Max has a really rich and wonderful Dvar Torah for us to hear, replete with insight and a couple of knee slappers. We're going to ask everyone to remain seated throughout his Dvar Torah so we can have your full attention. If you need to leave in the middle, it's an emergency, obviously you should do that, but please try to give him our full, quiet attention as he teaches us about Parshat Shoftim. Right after the Dvar Torah, we can wish him Yasher Koach, and then he will chant the Haftarah.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Have you heard the one about the bar mitzvah boy whose parents are both lawyers and his parsha focuses on justice? It's a good one. Remind me to tell you about it later. This week's parsha is Shoftim. Shoftim contains two main parts. One about justice and another about caring for trees. In the parsha, Moses instructs the people of Israel to appoint judges, and he commands them to administer justice without corruption or favoritism. The parsha also addresses how to investigate crimes, specifying that at least 2 credible witnesses are required for conviction and punishment. In addition to the teaching about justice, the parsha instructs us to have concern for trees, and it describes several rules about the treatment of trees during war. I want to focus on the parsha Shoftim that teaches us about justice. Shoftim opens with meaningful language. Moses says, Tzedek, Tzedek, Tirdof. Justice, justice shall you pursue, that you may thrive and occupy the land that Adonai your God is giving you. The Hebrew word for justice is tzedek, and Moses repeats the word tzedek in the parsha. Why does Moses repeat the word tzedek? Why isn't once enough? A wise rabbi once suggested to me that the repetition of the word tzedek is just a typo. Think about it. The Torah was handwritten by many different people, and maybe someone got distracted while they were writing. In fact, some scholars believe that extra words in the Torah may actually be scribal errors. Scribal errors that got stuck in the text. If that's not what happened, if it's not just a typo, and Moses really meant to repeat the word tzedek, then what is Moses trying to teach us by repeating that particular word? Several commentators have asked the question, why does Moses repeat the word tzedek in Shoftim? The Torah does not often repeat words, so the repetition is significant. Some scholars suggest that repetition is a way to add emphasis, like an exclamation point. Others say that Moses repeats the word tzedek because justice is both an obligation and a mitzvah. In other words, we should pursue justice because it's right and also because it's good. A well-known commentator, Ramban, says the word tzedek is repeated because it has 2 meanings. The first tzedek refers to actual justice. The second tzedek refers to righteousness. For example, sometimes my sisters and I disagree with each other. Sometimes we're equally right in our positions, but we still need to compromise to work out the issue. The repetition of tzedek teaches us that even when we're right, we still might need to compromise. Another commentator, Ibn Ezra, said that Moses repeats the word tzedek to indicate that one should pursue justice whether one gains or loses. There are lots of rules that we follow, even though we may not personally benefit from following them. This is hard to do, but it's necessary for a just society. I agree with the interpretation that Moses repeats the word tzedek because it has 2 meanings, an obligation and a mitzvah. To achieve a just society, you need people who will do good or act justly, even if they're not obligated to, and even if it is hard to do. But let's face it, people are not perfect. Is it even possible to achieve a just society if we're not perfect? And if we can't fully achieve a just society, should we even try? I say yes. We are a more just society today than generations ago, and we should continue to pursue justice because we can always be better. How does all this talk about justice relate to me or you? I really love playing sports, especially soccer and basketball. I train hard, I play hard, I'm committed and loyal to my teammates. I expect a lot of myself and them, and I know that no matter how hard we work, we can always do more. However, if we never played a game because we felt that we still had room to improve, we would lose out on the opportunity to improve. At some point, even though we can still improve, we're ready for the game. It's like me becoming a Jewish adult today. If I'm being honest, I feel pretty much the same today as I felt yesterday and the day before. I know that becoming a Jewish adult carries with it a lot of new obligations and responsibilities, and I know that I can always improve. But just like my soccer matches, I'm ready for today's big game. And I won't stop here. I'll continue to work hard because it's right and also because it's good. I want to take a moment on a special day to remember the many Jewish children who did not have the opportunity to celebrate a B'nai Mitzvah like me. This bookmark is to remember one of the 1.5 million Jewish children who perished in the Shoah. Max Solomon was born in 1932 in what is today Ukraine. He was killed at the age of 12 in Auschwitz. Unlike me, Max did not live to become a bar mitzvah, and although I did not know him or his family, he and I are connected, and I share this simcha with him. I also want to honor my great-grandfather, Max Gryczman, who was a Holocaust survivor and whose talit I'm wearing today on my bar mitzvah, a day that I know would make him very proud. Thank you to everyone here today. It means a lot to me to have my family and friends together. I especially want to thank the many people who helped and supported me in my bar mitzvah preparations. Rick Muller. I thank you for teaching me and making sure that I felt prepared and confident today. I especially appreciate your patience and kindness. Rabbi Klickfeld and Rabbi Cantor-Chorny. Thank you for guiding me through my bar mitzvah preparations. An extra mazel tov to Rabbi Klickfeld on his rabbinical bar mitzvah with Temple Beth On. My bris, 13 years ago, marked the first time you officiated as a rabbi at a life cycle event for Temple Beth On, and here we are today. Grandma, Grandpa, Grammy, and Subby. If everyone here today could close your eyes and imagine anywhere on earth you want to be. That's how I feel when I'm with my grandparents. Grandma, Grandpa, Grammy, and Subby, I love you all so much. Sadie and Lily. The three of us go together like s'mores. Lily, you're the marshmallow, sweet and flexible. You're the first to say I'm in when I ask who's up for just about anything. Sadie, you're the grand cracker. Without you coming first to pave the way with Mommy and Daddy, we'll fall apart. I'm the chocolate. Tough on the outside, but easy to melt. We're a perfect combo. I love you both. Daddy, I love spending time with you no matter what we're doing. Thank you for encouraging me to connect with my Jewish identity and for doing so much to make this day extra special. Thank you for keeping me laughing even when I get serious about things, but don't hold your breath about beating me at sports anytime soon. Mommy, oh boy, where do I even start? How can I say a proper thank you to the most caring, giving, and smartest mom ever? I'll give it my best shot. Mommy, thank you for always supporting me, for making the tastiest food, taking me to so many soccer practices and games, helping me with homework, and worrying about me no matter where I am or what I'm doing. I'm the luckiest boy in the world because I was born as your son. Thank you, and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Shakoach, Max. We're going to continue. We're going to continue with Max chanting the Haftarah. Open up your Chumashim. Open up your Chumashim to page 1108. If you're following from home, in a different Tanakh, open up to Isaiah chapter 51, verse 12.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratza b'divreihem hanemarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'Torah u'v'Moshe avdo u'v'Yisrael amo u'v'nviei ha'emet v'sedek. Anochi, hu menachemchem miyad vatiri meno shamut u'miben adam chatziri natein vatishkach Adonai osecha נוטה שמיים, יוצא לארץ, בטווחי תמיד כל היום, מפני חמה המציק, כאשר כונן להשחית, ואיה חמת המציק, מהר סוער להתפתח, ולא ימות לשחט, ולא יחסר לחמו. ואנוכי אדוני אלוהיך רוגע היום, ויהמו גליו, אדוני צבאות שמו. ואשים דברה בפיך, ובשל ידי כיסיתיך, לנטוע שמיים ולסעוד ארץ, ולאמור לציון עמי אתה. התעוררי, קומי ירושלים, אשר שתית מיד אדוני את חותמתו, את קופת כתרי לה, שתית מסית, אמנהל לה, מכל בנים ילדה, בן מחזיק בידה, מכל בנים גידלה, שניים הן עקרותייך, מי יענו לך, השוד והשבר, והרע והחרב, מי ינחמך. בנייך עופו שכבו, בראש כל חוצות כתוב מקמר, המלאים חמת עיני גרת אלוהיך. לכן שמינה זאת ענייה, ושחורת ולא מיין, כה אמר אדוני אדוני, אלוהיך יריב עמו, הנה לקחתי מידך את חתרי לה, את קופת כוס אמרתי, לא תוסיפי לשתותה עוד. ושמתיה ביד מלגייך, אשר אמרו לנפשך, שכי ונבוא, ותשימי כארץ גבי, וכחוץ לא עוברים. אורי אורי, לבשי עוזך ציון, לבשי בידי תפארתך. ירושלים עיר הקודש, כי לא יוסיף, יבבך עוד ערבת עמך. הנערי מעפר, קומי שבי ירושלים, התפתחי מוסרי סברי, שבייה בת ציון. כי כה אמר אדוני, חינם וניכרתם, ולא בכסף תגאלו. כי כה אמר אדוני אלוהים, מצרים ירד עמי בראשונה לגור שם, ואשור באפס אשקו. ואתה מליפוד ומדוני, כי לוקח עמי חינם, מושלה והילילו נמדוני, ותמיד כל היום שמי מנועד. לכן ידע עמי שמי, לכן ביום ההוא, כי אני הוא המדבר הנני. מנעו על ההרים, רגלי מבשר, משמיע שלום, מבשר טוב, משמיע ישועה, אומר לציון, מלך אלוהיך, כל סופייך, נעשו כל יחדה ירננו, כי עין בעין יראו, ושוב אדוני ציון. פיתחו רננו יגדה, חרבות ירושלים, כי ניחם אדוני עמו, גאל ירושלים. חשף אדוני את זרועו הקודשו, לעיני כל הגויים, וראו כל אפסי הארץ, את ישועת אלוהינו. סורו, סורו, סעו משם, טמא אל תיגעו, סעו מתוכה, היברו נושאי כלי אדוני. כי לא בחטפת צאן תצאו, ובנוסה לא תלכון, כי הולך לפניהם אדוני, ומפצירכם אלוהי ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, צור כל עמים, צדיק בהודרות, הנאמן, המר ועושה, המדבר ומקיים, לכל דבריו, אמת וצדק. נאמן אתה הוא, אדוני אלוהינו, ונאמנים דבריך, ודברך מדבריך, אחור לא ישוב ריקם, כי המלך נאמן, ורחמן אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, חייל הנאמן בכל דבריו. רחם על ציון, כי היא בית חיינו, ולעלובת נפש הושיע, במהרה בימינו, ברוך אתה אדוני. ושמח ציון בבניך. סמכנו על נעלינו ואליהו הנביא עבדך ומלכות בית אבי משיחך במהרה יבוא ויגיע לבנו על כיסא לא ישב זר ולא ינחלל עוד דרכים את כבודו כי בשם קודשי הנשבעת לו שלא יבעד נערו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני מגן דוד על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הנביאים ועל יום השבת הזה שנתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו לקשב במיוחד לכבוד ולתפארת על הכל אדוני אלוהינו אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך יתברך שמך בפי כל עת תמיד לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
Mazel tov, wish a huge Yisher Koach to Max. I'm so glad we're giving all of these delighted, excited children more sugar. I hope that some of the adults got a little bit of candy too, maybe pass an extra on. You can go ahead and put away those larger sidurim. We turn back, the larger chumashim rather, the larger of the two red books. And we continue in our sidur on page 176. בכל מי שעוסקים בצורכי ציבור ועניין ארץ ישראל באמונה, הקדוש ברוך הוא ישלם שכרם ויסיר מהם כל מחלה, וירפא לכל גופם ויסלח לכל עוונם, וישלח ברכה והצלחה בכל מעשי ידיהם, עם כל ישראל אלוהיהם. In no more we call forward all those who have been honored with reading for us and leading us in the prayers for country, Israel, IDF, and peace. So we call forward Jenny and Paul, Orrin and Melissa, Ryan and Rena and Allison. We invite everyone who's able to rise, please. We're on page 177 in Lev Shalem. First, a prayer for our country in the English.
A prayer for our country. Our God and God of our ancestors, with mercy accept our prayer. On behalf of our country and its government, pour out your blessings upon this land, upon its inhabitants, upon its leaders, its judges, officers, and officials who faithfully devote themselves to the needs of the public. Help them understand the rules of justice you have decreed so that peace and security, happiness and freedom will never depart our land. Adonai, God whose spirit is in all creatures, we pray that your spirit be awakened within all the inhabitants of our land. Uproot from our hearts hatred and malice, jealousy and strife. Plant love and companionship, peace and friendship among the many peoples and faiths who dwell in our nation. Grant us the knowledge to judge justly, the wisdom to act with compassion, and the understanding and courage to root our poverty from our land.
May it be your will that our land be a blessing to all who dwell on earth, and may it cause all peoples to dwell in friendship and freedom. Speedily fulfill the vision of your prophets. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. For all of them, from the least of them to the greatest, shall know me. And let us say,
Amen. We're at the top of page 178, a prayer for the state of Israel.
Avinu Shebashamayim, Sur Yisrael v'Goalo, Barich et Medinat Yisrael, Reshit Tzmichat Gulatenu. Agin alea ve'avat chastecha, v'fros alea suchat shlomecha. Ushlach orcha v'amitcha l'roshea, sarea v'yoatzea, v'taknem be'itzat tevan u'fanecha. Chazek et yidei meginei eretz kodshenu, v'anchilem Eloheinu Yeshua, v'ater nitzachon tachem. V'natata shalom ba'aretz, v'simchat olam liyoshveha,
V'nomar, Amen.
Avinu Sheba Shamayim, stronghold and redeemer of the people Israel, bless the state of Israel, that it may be the beginning of our redemption. Shield it with your love, spread over it the shelter of your peace. Guide its leaders and advisors with your light and your truth. Help them with your good counsel. Strengthen the hands of those who defend our holy land. Deliver them, crown their efforts with triumph. Bless the land with peace and its inhabitants with lasting joy. And let us say, Amen.
Amen. A prayer for peace responsively in the English.
May we see the day when war and bloodshed cease, when a great peace will embrace the whole world.
The nation and the human family will not again know war.
For all who live on earth shall realize we have not come into being to hate or to destroy. We have come into being to praise, to labor, and to love.
Compassionate God, bless the leaders of all nations with the power of compassion.
Fulfill the promise conveyed in Scripture. I will bring peace to the land, and you shall lie down, and no one shall terrify you.
I will rid the land of vicious beasts, and it shall not be ravaged by war.
Let justice and righteousness flow like a mighty stream. Let God's peace fill the earth as the waters fill the sea. And let us say,
Amen. Amen. We remain standing and turn our attention to the Bima as we hear a prayer for the IDF.
Mishaberach Avotenu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov, hu yivarech et chayalei tzva hagana liYisrael, haomdim al mishmar tzenu v'yarei Eloheinu, migvul halevanon v'ad midbar Mitzrayim, min hayam hagadol ad levo ha'arava b'yabasha b'yavir u'vayam, v'et hachayalim hachatufim v'hashvuyim b'yidei oivenu. Yitein Adonai et oivenu hakamim aleinu nigafim lifnehem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu yishmor v'yatzil et chayalenu mikol tzara v'tzukah mikol nega machala. Vayishlach bracha v'atzlacha b'chol ma'aseh yedeihem. Yadber sonenu tachtehem v'yatrem b'cheter Yeshua u'v'yater nitzachon. V'kuyam b'hem hakatuv. Ki Adonai Elohechem ha'holech imachem lehilachem lachem im oivechem lehoshiyatchem. V'nomar Amen.
Amen. He who blessed our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless the fighters of the Israel Defense Forces who stand guard over our land and the cities of our God, from the border of Lebanon to the desert of Egypt, from the great sea upon the approach of Arava, on the land, in the air, and on the sea, and the soldiers kidnapped and captured by our enemies. May the Almighty cause the enemies who rise up against us to be struck down before them. May the Holy One, blessed is He, preserve and rescue our fighters from every trouble and distress, from every plague and illness. And may He send blessing and success in their every endeavor. May He lead our enemies under our soldiers' sway, and may He grant them salvation and crown them with victory. And may there be fulfilled for them for the verse, for it is your Lord our God who goes with you to battle your enemies for you and save you. Let us respond.
Amen.
Amen.
We're seated for Ashrei, page 181, page 151, or 420.
Here you go.
אשרי יושבי ביתך, עוד יבלו חסלה.
אשרי העם שככה לו, אשרי העם שאדוני אלוהיו.
תהילה לדוד, ארמינך אלוהי המלך, בעברך שמך לעולם ועד.
בכל ימיו ברכך, ולשמך לעולם ועד.
גדול אדוני ומה מאוד, ולי תורתו עם חקר.
דור לדור ישבח מעשיך, ופרטיך יגידו.
הדר כבוד הודיך, ודברי נפלאותיך עשיך.
וזוז נועציך יאמרו, וגדולתך ספרנה.
זכר רבתך יביעו, ושיחך ירננו.
חנון רחום אדוני, ירחם חיים חסד.
טוב אדוני לכל, ורחמיו על כל מעשיו.
יודו אדוני כל מעשיך, וחסידיך יברכוך.
כבוד מלכותך יאמרו, וגבורתך ידברו.
להודיע לפני אדם גבורותיו, וכבוד הדר מלכותו.
ברוך מלכות כל עולמים, וממשלתך בכל דור ודור.
סומך אדוני לכל הנופלים, וזקף לכל הכפופים.
כל אליך יסברו, ואתה נותן להם את אחלם בעיתו.
פותח את ידיך, משביע לכל רצון.
צדיק אדוני בכל דרך וחסיד בכל מעשיו.
קרוב אדוני לכל תורה, לכל אנשי התקראות אמת.
רצון ירייה יעשה, ואת שבתם ישמע ויושיעם.
שומר אדוני כל עליו, ואת כל הרשעים ישמיד.
יראה אדוני ידבר פיו, יברך כל בשר שם קודשו לעולם ועד.
Shkoach Lily. We turn to page 183 or 153 or 422. Please rise as we return the Sefer Torah to the Ark. Max comes forward. may be seated. Most weeks in the month of Elul leading up to Rosh Hashanah, the Shabbat morning sermon or Dvar Torah is usually given by someone else besides one of the rabbis. We are spending our sermon writing time focusing on preparing for the holidays. And sometimes we have an opportunity in those Shabbatot to hear from some of the great luminaries and thinkers of our era. And sometimes it's just whoever says yes. The darshan this morning is Rabbi Elliot Dorff.
Don't worry, I'll get even. I want to talk about two parts of today's parasha, one methodological and the other substantive. The methodological part is a verse in Deuteronomy chapter 17, that when you have a question in your time, you go to the judge of your time, Asher Yehav Yamim Hahem, who will be in those times. And the Talmud asks, actually it comes from a Tosefta a little bit earlier, how would you ever think about going to a judge who's not in your time? After all, how are you going to get to some judge that's not in your time, right? But what it means to say is that you should not say that I don't like the judges of my time. I want to have the judges of previous times, right? So as it says, Moses and Gideon in his generation is worthy of being treated like Moses in his. Samson in his generation is like Aaron in his, and Yiftach in his generation is like Samuel in his. What then is the meaning of the phrase "in those days"? It teaches you need to go only to the judge in one's days, that is, the authorized judge to decide matters. And do not say, how is it that former days were better than these? In other words, do not say that I don't want to go to the judge in my time. Who's he? Right? I want Moses. I want Rabbi Akiva, not Rabbi Klickfeld. Of course, it could be worse. It could be me. Right? But what you get out of this is one of the things that is really immensely important in the development of the Jewish tradition, because twice in Deuteronomy, the Torah says that these are my laws, you may not add to them or subtract from them. So the legislative option in the Jewish legal tradition does not exist in the way that it does in the American legal tradition, both with legislatures, Congress, and ultimately the possibility of amending the Constitution. You don't have that in the Jewish legal system. So the Jewish legal system was able to be relevant to modern times on the basis of a lot of judicial activity. Judicial activism, which may be a no-no in certain philosophical parts of the American legal tradition, right, is standard operating procedure in the Jewish legal tradition, because it was the only way in which you were going to be able to make the law be relevant to modern times. So that then brings me to the other part of what I wanted to talk about. The end of this parsha talks about the ethics of war. In 2010, I was asked to come to a conference in Israel by Asa Kasher. Asa Kasher is a professor of philosophy at Tel Aviv University. He's the one who wrote the Code of Ethics for the Israeli Defense Forces. If you want to Google it, you can. Just simply Code of Ethics for Israel Defense Forces. It's called Ruach Tzahal, the spirit of the Israeli Defense Forces. And he asked us, now that was back in the 1950s that he wrote that, and he asked some of us who do some work in philosophy to come and talk about, well, what should a modern ethic for the Israeli Defense Forces look like? And where should it come from? If you look at that document, you will see that it comes from a variety of different sources, not Jewish law, the Jewish tradition. It's done very, very specifically not to deal with Jewish law, for a reason I'll mention in just a moment, but also from the general Western tradition and things like that. And so he asked two of us, namely Michael Walzer, who's a professor at Princeton, and he asked me as well to come to talk about that. And now, Michael Walzer is a lovely guy and really smart, and I happen to be a conservative Jew as well. And we did not know what we were going to say, but we both started out with the exact same recognition of the facts, namely that Jews were only in charge of which wars they were going to fight and how they were going to fight them. In the First Temple period, which ended in 586 before the Common Era, for about 100 years during the Hasmonean period, from roughly 165 to 63 before the Common Era, and since 1948 with the State of Israel. So if you're looking at Jewish sources to try to find an ethic of war, a Jewish ethic of war, all the Jewish sources are either very old or very new. So how are you going to get any kind of basis for a Jewish ethic of war? So Professor Walzer said, well, what you need to do then is borrow from the non-Jewish tradition. And it's not as if we have not done that. We clearly have. If you look at the Talmud, you'll see that there are a lot of borrowings from Greek and Roman law about business, about marriage, about all kinds of things. As a matter of fact, two of my professors, one, Saul Lieberman, wrote a lot about Greek and Jewish Palestine. That's the name of one of his books. And Boaz Cohn, another one of the professors in the seminary at the time, wrote a 2-volume thing about Roman and Jewish law. So it's not as if we haven't borrowed from other traditions. And so what Professor Walzer suggested was that we borrow from the just war theory that has been developed in Western thought, primarily in Catholic thought, actually, in order to be able to come up with a current ethic of Jewish ethic of war. What I suggested is that, yes, while we can certainly borrow from the outside world, we should try to look inward first. And so what I wanted to do was a kind of depth theology, as it were, into the values of the Jewish tradition to see how they might be applied to modern times. And those 2 articles were published in the journal Philosophia in 2012. And so if you're interested in them, just email me and I'll send you the links. But what is clear here is one example of what everybody in this room knows, namely that when 2 Jews are asked to talk about the same thing, they rarely come up with the same idea. 2 Jews, 3 opinions, except I mentioned that one time at a Scholar in Residence weekend, and a man came up to me afterward and said, do you really need 2 Jews for 3 opinions? So you need to know, though, that that's not what is true in most other cultures. Diane Ack, a professor at Harvard, has this wonderful line that if you only know one tradition, you know none. Because even if you only know your own tradition, you don't know what your ancestors how your ancestors chose to understand life and to live it. You have to assume that other people in the world, non-Jews, can be both smart and moral. And so if you want to know what our ancestors chose to do among a whole series of other options, you need to be able to study some of the other traditions of the world. I happen to do a lot of interfaith work, and I want to tell you 2 stories to illustrate how precious this is. One of the things I've been doing for a number of years is for the Anti-Defamation League. It's with teachers in Catholic high schools, most of whom are Catholic. And ADL's interest is to try to teach them the way, why is it that the church did not respond reasonably well during the Second World War, and then what happened in the Second Vatican Council, which completely revolutionized Catholic-Jewish relations through a document called Nostra Aetate, and then through some other things that Catholic popes have done since then, right? So that's what ADL's interest is. But often for these teachers in Catholic high schools, I'm sometimes the first Jew they've ever really talked to seriously, but certainly the first rabbi. And the priest with whom I do it is Father Dennis McManus. He's a really smart guy, has a doctorate in patristics. He teaches at Georgetown, and he is the liaison of the U.S. Council of Catholic Bishops to the Vatican. So he's in Rome every other month for about 2 weeks. And he knew Pope John Paul II personally. He knew Pope Benedict personally. He also mimics him. He's very funny, actually. And he says to his fellow Catholics, we Catholics are good at reception. We receive what we are told. At which point I tell them, Jews are terrible at reception, right? We question everything. And it takes a while for me. And as a matter of fact, I say to them, I'm going to teach you your first rabbinic saying. And I put on the board in English letters, Lo habaishan lo me. And I say to them, say after me, Lo habaishan lo me. And they do this 3 times. And I say to them, you're really trusting because you have no idea what you just said. But aside from that, what it means is the bashful person will not learn. And so what you need to do is, even if in your Catholic tradition, even if you're used to simply accepting what you're told, in the Jewish tradition, that's exactly not the way to be. You need to ask questions. Max, as your dad said to you, you need to continue to ask questions because that is the Jewish way. Let me tell you one other story. The Brentwood Presbyterian Church has services on Sunday mornings from 9 to 10 and then again from 11 to 12, and they have adult education between 10 and 11. About pre-COVID, about 3 or 4 years ago, they decided to do the religions of the world for their adult education, and they asked me to do Judaism in an hour, okay? So I said at the beginning, right, before I talk to you at all about the content of Judaism, you need to know its mode. It's very argumentative. It loves an argument. And the reason is not because we're nasty to each other, quite the opposite. It's that we take ourselves seriously enough, take each other seriously enough to listen carefully to what somebody else has said and be able to even, and be able to respond to it and maybe even challenge it, or maybe even add reasons for the claim, right? And that this ultimately comes from a very deep sense of humility about what human beings can know, right? Because since none of us is omniscient, God may be, but we're not, right? We're not all-knowing. So the best that we can do is talk to each other and argue with each other and try to get to some idea of what we as human beings can come to know. Remember that for the vast majority of human history, the most knowledgeable people in the world thought that the world was flat. So that should give you at least a sense of the degree to which we need to be humble about what we can know. It's called epistemological humility, knowledge of what we can know. So I did my thing for an hour, and this man came up to me afterward, late 50s, I would say, and he said, now I understand something. And I said, what do you understand? So I said, well, I've been an aeronautical engineer at Northrop Grumman for 30-some years. And whenever I suggested that we do something differently, I would get slammed down, except when I had a Jewish boss. So now I understand, this piece of our tradition that asks us to challenge things and to ask questions even gets into aeronautical engineering. And it's a really precious part of it. It's something that we Jews may take for granted, but you need to know it's not something that the vast majority of the world's traditions take for granted. The Buddhists don't, the Catholics don't, the evangelical Christians don't, the Hindus don't, the Taoists don't, right? And all of those traditions, you're supposed to simply accept what you're told. Whereas in our tradition, we're supposed to challenge and ask, in part out of interest in gaining truth and wisdom, and in part out of recognition that none of us is really omniscient. It's one of the many, many precious parts of our tradition, and it's one that I hope this comparison to other traditions will give you a sense of how precious it is. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shakoach, Rabbi Dorf. We're going to continue with the Musaf service. Please rise for the Chatzi Kaddish, page 184 in the Lev Shalem, 155 or 428 from Sidurim that you might have at home. After that, we'll go into the Heicha Kedusha for Musaf, which means that Rabbi Chorny will begin the blessings. We'll say the Kedusha responsively on the next 2 pages, and then we go back and say the Amidah to ourselves in a quiet whisper.
Yitkadav, Yitkadash Shmei Rabbi, Yamati Vrachir Tevim Lich, Malchutei B'chei Yechon V'Yechon V'Chei Yechon Beit Yisrael, V'Galav Yizman Kari, V'Imru Amen, Yehi Shmei Rabbi Levara, Li'Olam U'Lam Li'Olayah, V'Yiparach V'Yishtabach, V'Yibar V'Yishtamach, V'Yisnasei V'Yitadar V'Yitadar V'Yitalau, Shemei D'Kudesha V'Yirichu V'Yimiko Birchata V'Shivrata, Tishchata v'nechumata, damiram v'yama, v'imru
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor VaNorah El Elyon Gumel Chasadim Tovim V'Konei HaKol V'Zocher Chasdei HaVot U'Mevigo Elif Nevneihem Leman Shemo B'Ahava Melech Ozer U'Folkei Moshiach Magen Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Ufokei Sarah. Atah Gibor Leolam Adonai, Mitli Mitim Atah, Rav Leoshia, Michalkel
Chaim bechesed, v'chayei mesim berachamim rabim, somech noflim berafei cholim, umatir asurim, umekayem emunato, lishenei afar, michamocha b'gevurot, umidol elam, melech mevin, umechayem, umatzmiach Yeshua.
Baruch atah Adonai,
Amen. Narizcha v'nashir shezah bekonesh ma'adeshin shulchan bakar kol b'yadei achikaraz.
Naritzecha v'nadishecha Kisotzi sarfei kodesh sarfei kodesh hamadishim shimcha b'kodesh kakatuv v'yadnecha v'kar brazil se'liyomar
Kadosh, 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 Adonai Zevor, Kevodo, Kevodo Melam, V'shartav Shalin Zelazeh, Hayei Makom Kevoto, Matam Baruch Yomeru.
Kivodo
Ay, 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 ay,
Misharta Shoalim
Yachadim Shema
Mimikuma Yifim Mirachamim V'Yachon Hamam Yachadim Shemo Erev HaVoker B'Chol Yom Tamid B'Mayim B'Yahava Shema Mirim
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Eloheinu Hu Avinu Makenu Mosheinu V'Yashmenu Bracha Mavshelu
Eloheinu
Ay 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 Yemloch Adonai Lamazon Darbador, Hallelujah.
Lidor Vador, Hallelujah. Yanai, nanai, nai, nai, nai. Yanai, nanai, nai, yanai. Yanai, nanai, nai, nai. Yanai, nanai, nai, 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 nai.
la yamush le'olam va'ed, ki hamelech gadol v'kadosh Adonai.
Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh.
If you're still davening, please continue at your own pace. We continue Kaddish Shalem 203 in the left Shalem, or 181 or 506. Amen. Yeshmei Rabba Mevorach Leolam Leomei Omaya Yitbarach Berichu Amen. Amen.
Oh, say shalom, shalom aleinu, and
Amen. Ein Keloheinu, page 204, Jonah and Noah. Moshienu, mi Eloheinu, mi Chadonenu, mi Chamokeinu, mi Moshienu, Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodel Malkeinu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu,
Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu,
Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu, Atahu
Shektiru Avotenu,
Lefanecha Toreta. Please rise for Aleinu. Sam, Maya, and Annie.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'Adonai kol l'tegedu l'yotzer b'reshit shelo asanu k'ha'aratza v'lo samanu k'mishpat ha'adama v'lo samanu k'avem v'gor aleinu nevo'amonam v'anachnu morim u'shacharim u'modim l'ifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu shehu noteh shamayim ve'oseh haaretz u'moshe v'yikaro b'shamayim imahal u'shchinato v'gavei meromi hu Eloheinu eino emet malkeinu efes zulato kakatu v'torato v'yadata yom hashivota elevavecha ki Adonai hu Elohim b'shamayim imah v'yalaretz mitachadeinu eino elkenekai v'lachadonai Elohiro Liro mehe v'tiferet u'zecha l'takeinu l'malchut shavai. Ushemo. The page. We turn back to page 59, may be seated as we add in Psalm 27 as we anticipate the high holiday season. Did I read it? Thank you. Ki kamu v'yedei sheker v'feich v'lo amanti lo b'tuah.
Ulehimanti lirot b'tuv Adonai b'eretz chai. Kavei el Adonai chazak yemetz libecha v'kavei el Adonai.
Kadisha Tomornish Kaddish 207, 184, or 512.
Yitzgadal v'yitzkadash shemei Rabbi. Ve'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei. V'chayechon u'vyomechon u'chayei techol beit Yisrael. Va'agala u'vizman kari ve'imru.
Amen. Yehi Shemei Rabbi Mevorach Le'olam Le'olam.
Yisbarach v'yishabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shemei tekudsha b'richu. Le'ela mincho birchata v'shirata. Tush b'chata v'nechamata. Damiram be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Osei shalom b'romav. Hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen.
Max, come on up. As you made reference to a little bit in your drash, in addition to this being a significant moment in your life and life of your family, it is indeed a significant moment in my life. Because it's not just the fact that I've completed 13 years in this community, but this is the first time in my career that I've had a role in the bris or baby naming of someone, and then 13 years later in the bar mitzvah, right? That can only happen if you have spent 13 years in one community. And I remember being at your bris, one of the first things I did when I came here in Los Angeles, and imagining, would it be possible for this relationship that I have with this community to last that long, that I'd watch you grow up, see you become a young man, and get to share part of your bar mitzvah with you. And I want to thank all the times that your parents bribed all the voters every single time my contract was up, and it was like, it was just 50-50. They wanted to make sure that this was going to happen. I'm so grateful to them. And it goes back even further. I think it's the case that there's no one in the room, except for maybe David Bard, that I've known longer than I've known your father, right? And that would be the case, I think, even if my wife were in the room, which she's not. Because he and I go back to when we were both in USY, and knew each other at programs and at conventions and in Israel. And it's just extraordinary for me, having had actually roles in many of the Gryczman's lives, to be able to share yet another simcha, and to watch you come to the Torah as you did. And when I say as you did, I mean that, right? It's not just that you came to the Torah. You embraced this experience, right? With all of the maturity that we ascribe to a bar mitzvah, you really lived it out. There is a wonderful commentary on one of the lines that you read, one of the last lines of which I think was the fourth aliyah, I'm not sure, the aliyah that ends, Tamim tiyeh im Adonai Elohecha, right? You read that line. Right? And it's an interesting phrase, Tamim, pure, pure-hearted, tiyeh, you should be, im Adonai Elohecha, with Adonai your God. So we are conditioned to read the text as if every word is important, and if something seems extraneous, it's not. So Rabbi Moshe Alshich, who was a great sage who lived in Tzfat in the 16th century, he says, what are the words im Adonai Elohecha, with Adonai your God, add to the phrase tamim tiyeh, that you should be pure-hearted. What he says is it's one thing to be pure-hearted and to be focused on the right thing when you're in public and people are watching you and you're trying to make an impression and develop a reputation. That's important too. It's quite another thing when the only one that you're with is God, when you're alone, when no one's watching, when the spotlight is not on, and it's just you and your character, and just you what's important to you, that's when being pure-hearted is the most valuable. Kind of like when you wake up early in the morning and practice your Torah reading and practice your davening, not because someone's standing over you saying you should do it, but because you have a sense of the kind of person you want to be and the kind of bar mitzvah you want to experience. We all experience today, Max, your sense of being tamim, full and pure-hearted, and truly earning this title. But it's even more significant because I know, and so many of us who know you know, that even when we're not looking, even when it's not being recorded, even when it's not an event, but it's just you living your life with God, you are no less tamim. You might even be even more so. So for all of what you have done to prepare for this day, and I hope that you are experiencing it with great pride, and for all that you represent as part of these great family clans, and they really are, right? We say all the time that it takes a village. Your family is a village, right? Your family is a village consisting of people who love Torah, who love Israel, who support Jewish communities and Jewish causes. And as I anticipated 13 years ago, this moment, without knowing you were going to be, we can also anticipate a generation from now, when you're the leader of a family, and you're the leader of a clan, and your children are coming to the Torah because of what you have taught them and what you have modeled for them, helping them to become as tamim as you are. We're really amazed by you, and we're proud of you, and wish you a mazel tov. It's my honor to call to the bima the Vice President of Education of Temple Beth Am and the head of the Pressman Academy Education Cabinet, Josh Kaplan, for some gifts and some words.
Still here, Max. So this is like the curtain call for you, Max, after a great job. You hit the trifecta today. Great laning, great Haftarah, beautiful speech. It's really a neat parsha. There's so much to talk about. Rabbi Dorf talked about a couple different parts of it. Rabbi Kligfeld just talked. When I gave my bar mitzvah speech on this parsha, you and I chose the same part. So there's a lot to talk about here. And it's, but I was thinking a little bit about it and stepping back and what really is this whole parsha is Moshe talking to the Jewish people. And it reminds me of going a long drive with your parents to a soccer game. They're telling you, do this and do this. And if this happens, remember, do this. Or if this happens, do that. And before you go to camp, the same laundry list of things. All these different scenarios. That's what this parsha is. When you go to Israel, this is going to happen. If you're fighting a war and this happens. If you're chopping wood and the axe head falls off and hits somebody, this is what you're supposed to do. There are all these things. And so stepping back, what is it really about? It's about justice, like you talked about. It's about compassion for people. And it's about community. And those are three things that you and your family and this community really believe in. We've seen you grow up with those values. And so we're going to give you a few things here today, which are, so sometimes it's advice that takes you through those things, and sometimes it's physical symbols and acts that do it. And so first you have your certificate of Bar Mitzvah, so this is official. You have a Tanakh that is from the sisterhood, that you can go back and refresh yourself on the Parsha and the Haftarah anytime you want. You have a Kiddush cup from the Men's Society that you can use every Shabbat. You have Israel Matters book, which you know Israel does matter, and now you can read the book to confirm that. And you have socks, which I believe are from the book is from the LA Federation, and the socks from the LA Jewish Team Initiative, and I believe you pull them up high enough you can stick shin guards in. So you'll be good to go with those. So I just want to wish you a mazel tov, and I want to say that I know that in many, many years, when it's your turn, you're going to one day being up here on your anniversary of your bar mitzvah, giving these kind of gifts to somebody else, because you're going to be a leader in your community, hopefully our community, or wherever community you are. So mazel tov, fantastic job, mazel tov to you guys. On the back, some custom account.
You got applause, Up to you.
And we know it's not just that bag that you're getting from Pressman Academy, but also so much of the scaffolding that you're standing on that we got to celebrate here today. And so we wish you yashar koach to everyone who had a hand in training you up. This has been a wonderful morning of celebration. I want to make a very few brief announcements about the next couple of days, and then we'll move to Adon Olam. So our Adon Olamers should get ready. Tomorrow morning and the following morning, Daily Minyan is at 8 a.m. both days because of the federal holiday on Monday, and also announcing to this whole community that we could really use help if you're local. Our evening Minyan is moving to 6:30 p.m. It's the most reasonable time of the year for an evening Minyan time every day. So please do join us if you can. Starting Sunday night, it'll be at 6:30. A couple of extra things to note, besides the fact that this afternoon we're learning at about 6:30 or so on the field for afternoon learning. Next week to come, two special things. First, there is no clergy-led sanctuary service that is in a traditional format. Instead, it's hama'alot here in the sanctuary, Parshat Kititze, and we're going to have this 90-minute renewal experience that is almost, it's not quite at its bar mitzvah, but it's at almost 10 years we've been doing this renewal style service, and we encourage you to join us. And we also encourage you to join us then for afternoon next week, just for all of you planners. Right, Max is a real planner. For all of our planners out there, next Saturday afternoon, we meet earlier than usual so that we can expand our celebration at Mincha and Sudah Shlishit and Mariv as Zion Gerla comes to Torah. So you can already mark your calendars for next week after Shabbat. We are going to conclude in just a moment with a Adon Olam and then Kiddush, and I believe we have Adon Olam leaders. Page 211.
Elias.
Yeah, Elias and Jonah.
Adon Olam.
Asher malach b'terko yitzir nivra lignasa v'chesa kol azam melech shemo nikra Adon Olam ve'acharei kichlotako levado yimloch nara Adon Olam ve'hu haya ve'hu hoveh ve'hu yeh v'tifara Adon Adon Olam, Asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra lignasa
להמתילו לרחורה אדון עולם, ולראשי ולהיטלי, ולעוז אדון עולם, אדון עולם, אשר נולד, בטרם כל יציר נברא, וכסף, וסקול, אזי מלך שמו נקרא אדון עולם, והוא אלי, וחי גואלי, וצורר לי בצורה אדון עולם, והוא ניסי, ומעצור לי, ולחסידי נקרא
Adon Olam, Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'Terem Kol Yitzir Nivra Le'Basar, V'Sakol, Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Adon Olam, Be'yado Afkid Ruchi, Be'tishan Be'ayira Adon Olam, Be'im Ruchi Devi'ati, Adonai li velo ira Adon Olam. Please rise for Kiddush. After Kiddush, everyone is welcome. Gratitude to the Gryczman family out onto the field for Kiddush luncheon. Please, everyone join us for luncheon. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש. זכור את יום השבת לקדשו שיש מדובות תבות ועשית כל מלאכתך ויום השביעי שבת לנעלך לא תעשה כל מלאכה תעבדך ותך עבדך מלך ובנתך גרך אשר בשעריך כי שיש ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים והארץ את הים וכל אשר בם וינח ביום השביעי על כן ברך אדוני את יום השבת ויקדשהו שרים ארנן רבנן רבותי Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam borei Pri Hagafen. And Max will lead us in Amotzi. Shh. Let's just quiet down so we can hear Amotzi together.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kishan v'titav v'tivan al netilat yadayim. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.